Welcome to my channel. And today I want to share a story that will leave you questioning trust, loyalty, and the true value of peace in relationships. It's the story of Chiamaka, a woman who thought she had the perfect life, until one day she discovered the devastating truth about her husband and the neighbor she called a friend. This story will show you the power of resilience, the importance of observing the signs around you, and how sometimes it's better to walk away than to stay in a life built on lies. Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. What would you do if you discovered that the woman waving at you every morning from the next compound was not just your neighbor, but your husband's secret first wife? Once upon a time, in a bustling part of Lagos called Aja, there lived a woman named Chiamaka. Chiamaka was 32 years old and believed her life was as perfect as freshly fried plantains on a Sunday afternoon. She had been married to her husband Emeka for 7 years. They had 2 lovely children, a boy named Chidera, who was 6, and a girl named Amara, who was 4. Every morning, Emeka would kiss Chiamaka on the forehead before leaving for his construction business. By evening, he would return smelling of cement and hard work, and Chiamaka always had his food warm and ready. Their house was a modest 3-bedroom flat in a compound with 4 other homes. It was comfortable, though not luxurious. Rent was steep, but Emeka always paid on time. Chiamaka ran an online clothing business and earned her own money, so life was steady. In the compound lived a variety of families. Mama Ngozi, who sold a car at the gates. Brother Tunde, the perpetually single man who played loud Afrobeat music. The elderly couple Papa and Mama Ezi. And then there was a quiet woman named Adesola, who had moved in about 2 years ago. Adesola was slim, fair-skinned, and spoke in a soft voice that sounded like a constant whisper. She lived alone, or so everyone thought. She was always friendly to Chiamaka, waving every morning with a cheerful, "Good morning, my sister?" Occasionally she brought food over, or offered to watch the children when Chiamaka ran errands. Chiamaka considered Adesola the perfect neighbor. She often said, "Adesola is so kind. She always helps with the children." Emeka never looked up when she mentioned Adesola's name, his eyes fixed on his plate. Love, Chiamaka realized, could blind a woman like a bat in a sunlit room. The first odd event occurred on a Thursday evening. Chidera ran into the kitchen shouting, "Mommy! Mommy! I saw Daddy!" Chiamaka, stirring beans, smiled calmly. "Chidera, Daddy will be home soon. Be patient." "No, Mommy, I saw him now. He's going into Auntie Adesola's house." Chiamaka froze mid-stir. "What did you say?" "I saw Daddy go through the back door," Chidera insisted. Laughing nervously, Chiamaka told herself it must have been someone who looked like Emeka. Perhaps he had helped Adesola with her generator, or carried something inside. She tried to dismiss the thought. That night, she asked Emeka if he came home early. "No," he replied casually. Chiamaka could not sleep. 2 weeks later, she overheard Amara singing a strange song. "Daddy bought me sweets. Daddy has another house where we sometimes eat." Then Chiamaka's heart sank. Chidera admitted the song came from Adesola's children, a boy and a girl, who bore a striking resemblance to him. Shock and fear clawed at her chest. That night, she waited for Emeka like a silent hunter, observing his every move. Each morning, at 5:30 a.m., he would quietly slip out of their house and sneak into Adesola's through the back door, returning as if nothing had happened. After a week of watching, Chiamaka decided to follow him. Her heart pounded as she trailed him into Adesola's home. Knocking loudly at the front door, she pushed past a terrified Adesola to discover Emeka, wearing only boxer shorts, standing before 2 children, a boy and a girl, mirrors of Chidera and Amara. The silence was suffocating until Chiamaka screamed, awakening the entire compound. Neighbors poured out, some filming, some shouting. Emeka stammered, "Chiamaka, she's my wife." He confessed that he had married Adesola 3 years before Chiamaka, in his village, had 2 children with her, and brought her to Lagos 2 years ago, renting the house next door. All this while, he maintained his life with Chiamaka, secretly sending Adesola money and orchestrating a plan for her to move close to him to spy on Chiamaka. Chiamaka's shock turned to calm fury. Emeka had allowed her to smile at the woman who was slowly poisoning her with herbs to weaken her mind and body. She confronted Adesola, who remained silent, confirming her complicity. Chiamaka's anger turned to clarity. She told both of them they were cowardly and wicked, deserving each other, and laughed, a true liberated laugh, realizing her worth and her children's safety were paramount. That day she left with her children, calling her elder brother, who arrived with a truck to help move all their belongings. Emeka begged, but Chiamaka's resolve was unshakable. "Your children?" "Which children?" she asked coldly, knowing full well they belonged next door. She left the compound, a proverb in motion. A man who keeps two wives in the same compound is like a man playing with two snakes. Sooner or later, one will bite him. 6 months later, Chiamaka thrived in her new life, her clothing business booming, her children happy, her peace restored. Emeka was left alone, shunned and disgraced. The compound still whispers her story. Watch the signs, listen to your children, and protect your peace, for deceit often hides behind a friendly smile. After leaving the compound that morning, Chiamaka felt a strange mixture of liberation and grief. Her body was tired from the adrenaline of the confrontation, but her mind was racing with plans for the future. She held Chidera's small hand tightly in one hand and Amara's in the other, feeling their warmth and innocence grounding her. The streets of Aja bustled with the usual morning chaos, traders calling out prices for yams and tomatoes, motorbikes weaving through traffic, children rushing to school, and the distant hum of construction work somewhere nearby. Yet none of it mattered to Chiamaka as much as the freedom of knowing she had reclaimed her life from Emeka's deceit. By the time they reached her elder brother Obina's house in the suburb of Lekki, the truck had already arrived. Obina, a tall man with a commanding presence softened only by his gentle smile, had brought 4 men to help pack Chiamaka's belongings. Every item in the house, clothes, cooking utensils, toys, furniture, was packed with precision, as if preparing for a journey of survival rather than a move of convenience. Chiamaka watched quietly, feeling a deep satisfaction as her possessions left the house where betrayal had flourished. Emeka had begged at the gates, his face a mixture of despair and disbelief, but she did not even glance at him. "Your children? Which children?" she asked again, her voice calm but cutting like the sharp edge of a knife. Emeka dropped his head, realizing the depth of her indifference. He was powerless now, stripped of his control. Once safely inside her brother's house, Chiamaka allowed herself a long, cleansing cry. Obina wrapped her in a tight embrace, murmuring comforting words she barely heard over the pounding of her own heart. Chidera and Amara watched their mother with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Chiamaka crouched down to their level, smoothing Chidera's hair and holding Amara close. "Everything is going to be okay," she whispered, feeling the weight of responsibility as both protector and nurturer. She realized that her children, though young, had already seen through the deceit of adults and had unwittingly saved her from a life of silent suffering. The thought filled her with gratitude and awe. Over the next few days, Chiamaka began to rebuild her life. She called the police to report the poisoning attempts, submitting the evidence of herbs and unusual substances that had been found in her blood tests. Adesola was arrested and, after 2 weeks in custody, returned to her village in shame, taking her children with her. Emeka's business began to crumble as news of his double life spread through the community. Clients withdrew contracts, friends and associates distanced themselves, and even neighbors who had once admired him now whispered behind closed doors. The man who had tried to control 2 households simultaneously was left with nothing but the bitter taste of his own greed. Meanwhile, Chiamaka focused on restoring her emotional and financial independence. With the support of Obina and their mother, she restarted her clothing business, creating new designs inspired by resilience and empowerment. She spent time teaching Chidera and Amara the values she had learned the hard way: honesty, observation, and the importance of trusting one's instincts. The children, once quiet witnesses to deceit, now thrived in an environment of love, security, and transparency. Chiamaka also allowed herself to grieve, but she refused to wallow. Every morning, as Lagos came alive outside her window, she felt the sun on her face and the promise of new beginnings in her heart. Months later, Emeka attempted to reach out. He called Chiamaka repeatedly, begging for forgiveness, promising to change, to rebuild what he had destroyed. But Chiamaka, having learned the true value of peace over deceit, refused. She laughed once on the phone, a sound of pure liberation, and told him, "Some people are like counterfeit money. They look real, they feel real, but when you test them, you discover they're fake. Thank you for showing me who you really are." She hung up, feeling lighter than she had in years. The compound of Aja still whispered her story. Neighbors would point to the houses and tell visitors about Chiamaka, the woman who had refused to tolerate deception, who had taken her children and walked away with dignity, leaving behind a man whose lies had destroyed him. As Chiamaka's clothing business flourished, she began mentoring other women in the community, teaching them how to start small businesses and gain financial independence. She became a symbol of strength, a living testament that betrayal, no matter how deep, could be transformed into empowerment. She often told young women, "Never ignore the signs. Children notice more than you think. Trust them, trust yourself, and protect your peace above all else." Her story became a lesson repeated in Aja and beyond. A reminder that life could be rebuilt, that deceit could be exposed, and that courage could lead to freedom. Even as the memory of Emeka and Adesola lingered, it no longer held power over her. Chiamaka woke each day with clarity, guiding her children with love, running her business with skill, and living with the quiet pride of a woman who had refused to be a victim. And as Lagos buzzed around her, she realized something profound. Peace of mind, once regained, was more valuable than any marriage, any wealth, or any social approval. Chiamaka had survived, thrived, and emerged stronger, a beacon for anyone who had ever been betrayed, underestimated, or deceived. As weeks turned into months, Chiamaka began to see her new life not as a replacement for the one she had lost, but as an awakening to a better, more empowered existence. Each morning she walked her children to school, taking the longer, scenic route past bustling markets and colorful street stalls, greeting neighbors who had once known her only as Emeka's wife. Some stared in awe, others whispered behind their hands, but Chiamaka held her head high, letting their judgment pass like the wind. At home, she transformed the house into a sanctuary of safety and creativity. Her living room, once a place of quiet routine, now echoed with laughter as she and her children created art, read stories, and dreamed together. Chidera, ever curious, would ask her questions about right and wrong, honesty and courage, and Chiamaka answered with honesty, weaving lessons from their past pain into stories they could understand. Imara, still young but perceptive, would mimic her mother's confident stride, often running to open the door for neighbors, her small hands echoing the strength Chiamaka had nurtured within her. Chiamaka also returned to her clothing business with renewed vigor. She designed vibrant prints inspired by African heritage, resilience, and the triumph of women over adversity. Orders began pouring in from all over Lagos, and soon she expanded her team, hiring young women who reminded her of herself before marriage, before betrayal, full of ambition but lacking opportunity. She mentored them, sharing not only sewing skills but the deeper lesson that independence and self-worth were more valuable than any approval or material gain. Business meetings, design sessions, and client deliveries became opportunities for Chiamaka to assert control over her life and her destiny. Word of Emeka's downfall continued to ripple through the community. His business suffered as former clients withdrew support, fearful of the scandals surrounding his deceit. Former friends who had once admired his wealth and charm now avoided him, whispering among themselves about the man who had tried to control 2 households and failed spectacularly. The compound of Aja, which had once been a setting for daily life, became a cautionary tale of greed, manipulation, and the dangers of secret lives. Even when Emeka tried to approach neighbors for help or sympathy, they either turned away or reminded him of the very real consequences of his duplicity. Chiamaka, meanwhile, found strength in routines and small victories. Every evening, after putting Chidera and Amara to bed, she would sit by her window with a cup of tea, reflecting on how far she had come. She thought of Emeka and Adesola, and the bitter pang of betrayal had lessened, replaced by a quiet understanding that their choices were theirs alone to bear. She realized that anger had its place, but dwelling on it would have only chained her to the past. Instead, she allowed herself to feel the pain, acknowledge it, and then channel it into growth. Her nights became times of meditation, planning, and gentle self-care, a far cry from the sleepless, anxious nights she had endured in the compound where lies festered. One afternoon, as she walked her children to school, she ran into Mama Ngozi, the Akara seller from the old compound. Mama Ngozi had tears in her eyes as she embraced Chiamaka. "My daughter, you have risen," she whispered. "You have shown everyone what strength looks like." Chiamaka smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement, but she also knew the true measure of her success: her children's safety, their happiness, and her reclaimed dignity. Chidera tugged at her sleeve, pointing to a group of younger children playing nearby. "Mommy, can we teach them the songs we sing?" he asked. And in that moment, Chiamaka realized she was not just raising her own children. She was nurturing a generation capable of discernment, courage, and truth. 6 months after leaving Emeka, Chiamaka had fully established her business and her new life. She no longer feared the gossip of the community. Instead, she became a pillar of inspiration. She often spoke at local women's groups, telling her story, emphasizing the importance of observation, intuition, and taking decisive action when necessary. Her narrative became a lesson repeated in homes and markets. Deception may hide behind the friendliest faces, but peace and integrity must always guide one's choices. Emeka attempted one final call, pleading for reconciliation, but Chiamaka answered with calm certainty. "No," she said. "I do not miss lies, deception, or betrayal. I have my peace. That is more valuable than any marriage or wealth." She hung up, feeling the finality of the decision. Emeka was left to live alone, stripped of both families, while Chiamaka's life flourished with authenticity and purpose. Years later, Chiamaka looked back at that dark chapter with clarity. The compound in Aja, once a symbol of betrayal, had taught her lessons that no other experience could have provided. Her children thrived, her business expanded across Lagos, and she became known as a woman who transformed suffering into strength. Chiamaka learned that peace of mind was a treasure worth more than gold. That observation and intuition could save lives, and that courage and decisiveness could turn even the deepest betrayal into empowerment. The story of Chiamaka was whispered through neighborhoods, a testament to resilience, a warning of the consequences of deceit, and an inspiration for women who dared to reclaim their lives and their dignity. And so, Chiamaka's life, once shadowed by lies and betrayal, blossomed into one defined by truth, independence, and the enduring power of a woman who refused to be defeated. Her clothing business thrived, her children grew in safety and joy, and every day she walked with her head held high, a living reminder that those who deceive may prosper briefly, but the courageous and the honest always endure. And so, Chiamaka's journey teaches us one of the most important lessons in life. Peace of mind is priceless. Sometimes we hold on to things, relationships, and people that are slowly poisoning our lives, all because we're afraid of letting go. But the truth is, walking away from what doesn't serve us is often the most powerful step we can take toward healing and growth. Remember, always trust your instincts, watch for the signs, and never settle for a life of deceit. It's better to be alone with your truth than to be surrounded by lies. Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And as always, remember to stay true to yourself no matter the storm. If you like this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family, so you don't have to miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting story videos.